Happy New Year.
Rob, Alan?
Got it. Is that me? Do you hear me?
You.
Yes.
Yep.
But I can't hear you guys.
Why?
We were all being silent.
There's something.
I hear buzzing. Somebody's
Yeah,
buzzing.
there's something in the background that's like, almost sounds like a.
Oh, I got it. Hold on.
Dedicated to delivering 3D online protection for privacy.
Please, that's
Chair-
not a
Start.
Sorry?
Sponsor. Who's running the commercial?
Yeah. Shouldn't we be paid for that? Don't they have to pay us for airtime?
Yes.
Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year.
Here. Happier than 2020.
Yes, Chairman, you could start.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. This is the meeting, January 7, 2021, meeting of the Planning Board of the Village of Dobbs Ferry, being held tonight, January 7. We have an interesting agenda as always, 8 items on our agenda. The first one will be probably the least interesting for our attendees. Item 1, to adopt the minutes for the Planning Board meeting of December 3, 2020. In the new world, we are now getting copies of everything that goes on during the meeting. I think we're page 46 this time. So I hesitate to ask if anyone has read through and has any comments or corrections on the minutes.
I somehow missed the minutes.
Oh, good. I mean, I looked through it. I think it's fine.
They look fine. The pictures are nice, you know, kind of thing.
Yeah, I didn't see them either. I'm gonna have to abstain.
I abstain as well.
Yeah. Well, I would move that we approve the minutes for our meeting of
You have a
meeting of
quorum?
December 3, 2020. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. You're
You're
saying
for.
no?
You're for.
2000.
Peter voted.
Okay, good.
Yeah, we got it.
Yep.
Agenda item number 2 is 253 Palisade Avenue, public hearing for site plan review for proposed new retaining walls. As I did last time, I need to leave the meeting now. The current property is adjacent to my property, and it's just appropriate that I not be involved in that decision. And I've again asked Steve Brosnahan to chair for this item. Thank you.
Thank you.
So it's the public hearing. Can we make a motion to open the public hearing? It's already
Aye.
open. Me too. All right, who's here to talk about it?
I just promoted someone to a panelist, and there's another one. Hold on. Ubada, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes. And Mark, can you hear us?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, so my name is Obeda from Hudson Engineering, here on behalf of our client regarding 253 Palisades Avenue. I believe this was before the board previously. Let me just share the screen. Can everybody see the screen?
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
So we were before the board previously. I don't know if you guys had any reservations or anything along those lines, but we went before the AHRB and they didn't really have any issues with the project. To summarize again briefly, the intent is to install 2 retaining walls along the property to give the homeowner some flat area to work with compared to the steep area he has now. And then on our end, we've installed, we're proposing to install Coltech units to account for roof area that was previously daylighting from the property, just off to the property behind them. Now we're capturing all the roof runoff from the roof area and directing it into the Coltech system. In good faith, essentially, for what we're trying to do with regards to getting the flat backyard. And I know we have some comments from Han Engineering, and we've been in discussions with them to address those comments. I don't think there's anything significant. I don't believe there's anything significant as far as what the board would visually see here, as far as changes are concerned.
George, didn't you make a comment that it was on top of a water main or a sewer main? What is it? At the Caltech?
That's correct, Steve. The
So,
sewer line crosses through the backyard there, and the proposed infiltration system is on top of that sewer line. So as the applicant's engineer has mentioned, we're in discussions to have them relocate that to another location so that if the sewer line ever gets dug up, you don't have to dig up the Coltech system. Or if there's a compromised sewer line, water doesn't inadvertently end up in the sewer system. So that's one of the comments that we had open. And then we talked about it, the chain link fence. I think there was a proposed 6-foot high chain link fence. I think the code says you can only have a 4-foot high chain link fence.
mhm.
And those were the only two outstanding items. And the building department mentioned that the chain link fence can't extend into the front yard because that's not permitted by code. So, but that was the only thing. And this application was part of a.
We did receive a,
I'm sorry, it was part of a late submission, and they did not meet the deadline. So we were going to hold off for a resolution until the next meeting.
okay. We did receive a letter from the neighbor at 255 with some concerns about runoff. He said there was runoff from his property, but he's right next door. So we were trying to understand what that meant.
I'm the neighbor. My name is Mark Hefter. I live at 255 Palisade Avenue.
Oh, okay.
We're the house immediately north of the subject
So
property.
this is a public hearing. This is still a public hearing. If you want to speak to that.
Yeah, I wanted the committee to be aware of this runoff problem. We noticed it for the first time maybe a year ago. It seems to start from the street every time we have a significant rainfall. The water seems to come down the driveway at 253 and then down the side of a rather steep incline that's on the border of our properties, and a lot of the runoff comes onto our property. And I just wanted to make the committee aware of that, and also ask that whatever design is adopted, try to mitigate this problem. We've had a lot of erosion in our yard as a result of this. We've had our gardeners fill it in several times already on 2 or 3 occasions. And certainly we don't want whatever this is to make the problem any worse.
If I may, to our knowledge, the existing house does not have any stormwater system. So all the roof leaders daylight onto the rear of the property. So in our proposed scenario, we're capturing all the roof leaders and directing them into the Coltech units. So that should do a pretty good job of completely or reducing the runoff that may be coming onto his property from our property.
Mhm.
Well, this doesn't come from the house. This comes directly from the street on Palisade Avenue. It comes into their driveway. They have a little tiny front porch in front of their garage. It comes off there. Again, I don't have it right available with me, but I've taken pictures of it before. When it rains heavily here, it comes down like a small waterfall, and then from there it comes down like a stream down a hill and into our side yard, which is on the south side of our property, and into our backyard. And again, it has on at least 2 or 3 occasions, we've had a rather dry year, at least in the 25 years that we've lived here, for our experience. But again, we've had 2 or 3 heavy rainstorms, and every time that it's happened, we've had some erosion, some debris coming in, some rocks and things like that. And again, we have no objection to what our neighbors want to do. It's just we don't want it to impact our property in a negative way.
Well, I mean, if they put up a little berm at the head of their driveway, where would the water from the street go?
I would assume further down the street.
Can George comment on that?
Yeah, is there a drop curb there now? I'm asking that to the engineer.
I'm not sure. Let me take a look.
Because if there's a drop curb there now, and there's let's say it's 1.5, 2 inches. I'm not sure how much higher you can make it. You'd have to, as the chairman had mentioned, you might have to put some type of berm in towards the driveway, but that might compromise the driveway profile itself.
I mean, this is what we're looking at here.
But it's something that we can look at, and since the board is not acting on this one for this submission, on the next submission, maybe the engineer can talk to it some more and update the board as to what they find.
That's fine. We can look into that.
All right. We could close the public hearing, or we could extend it to the next meeting. There's no one else speaking on this. We could close.
Yeah, you don't want to close it. You want
To continue.
Yeah, you want to adjourn it to
continue it. Okay.
Yeah.
So I make a motion, we continue the public hearing to the next meeting.
I agree. I agree.
Okay.
Do we know the date of the next meeting, by the way? I don't have a calendar in front of me. I'm sorry.
Let's see.
It's February 4th.
Okay. So it'll be continued on February 4th or adjourned to February 4th. Yep.
Okay.
Thank you, Steve. The next
You're
item
welcome.
on our agenda, item 3, is 156 Palisade Street, continuation of pre-submission conference for site plan review for new proposed multifamily building. I don't know if Mr. Steinschneider or anyone else has joined us.
Yes, I'm putting them on right now.
Good.
Patty, can you hear us?
I think I can hear you, and I think you can see me.
Yes.
Yes.
David, can you hear us?
David, can you hear us?
I'll take that as a no.
Maybe. I'm hoping he sure can.
There it goes. Yes, I can hear
There you
you.
go. Good.
Yes.
First, Happy New Year to everybody. It's an interesting New Year so far.
Happy New Year.
See what happens next. So, David, do you want to do the talking?
Sure. Can I share the screen?
Yes.
May I share the screen? Yes.
Well, can you is the bigger challenge for me.
Here we go. I'm sorry for the delay. Okay, are you seeing the drawings?
Yes.
I can see it.
Okay. Okay. This one's a little more difficult to see. But this shows what we did, I think, from the previous scheme. What we did was we kept the front elevation as it was, and we modified the stair hall, the entry and the stair, pushed it back a little bit and modified it so we can. I'll show it to you on the elevation wise. Let's go. There we go. So I apologize for, I think this would read a little better if we had some shadows on it, but I didn't have time to do that. But what we have is the body of the building, that the units that come forward that are, the porch is 10 feet back from the sidewalk with, or the balconies are 10 feet back from the sidewalk, and then the building facade is actually 8 feet back from that, so it's 18 feet from the property line. And then you would have the stair hall over on the side here with an entryway in the middle, and then the building in the back. What we did was we put a well, it's a gable roof on this, gabled on the side, but it slopes down towards, which is also mimicking the other elevation. To go back to, so you could see the main elevation here, and then this elevation from the side, you have the porch, which is that portion, an overhang, 6-foot overhang with so that you could have a seating area, and then you would walk in between the stair tower, or the stair core, and the wall of the building, and then enter into the lobby space with the elevator and then the stairs that go up, that circulates between the units. You can see that what we did here was we also we mimicked the same roof pitch, and we put it back, except that the eave line is up at the 3rd floor, and so and then with the hip roof on the back behind the other roof pitch, so that it actually, instead of having a block face that doesn't relate, that these slope roofs all relate to one another, so it hides the basic massing of the building in the back. So if you look from the north side along this face here, this is the same slope with the dormer as we had discussed in the previous meeting, and that's how we modified the stair so that it has a slope roof, so that it doesn't pop up and it's further back beyond the main front elevation. So here's the plan. So the main floor is, what we'll have is a stair, open stair that splays out onto the sidewalk. You would walk up, and then you would have an open entry kind of courtyard elevated above the sidewalk, and then you would walk underneath the covered area and walk into the lobby, walk into the main kind of lobby with the doors to the units, and then a stair going up, and then an elevator that goes both the garage and then the upper floors. So this plan is the same all the way up on the 2nd floor, and then the 3rd floor. So Patty, you want to go over the numbers in terms of the calculations here?
Yeah,
I'll zoom into it.
Okay, well, good. So I don't need that thing. I've got the numbers in front of me, but put the
Okay.
plan, the site plan up, to move it to the left. Yeah, there you go. Basically what we did was we took the 32.8% as a goal for the footprint of the building. And we did that and worked it out to that exactly. To do that, what we would do is we would have to cut this section out, this 8-foot, 15-foot section. If we don't have that as a part of the building, then we're at 32.8%. Obviously, we can do that if you think it makes sense. In our thinking, it makes more sense just to connect the building at that point, even though that would increase us to 34.4%. But I know that you're going, you're working on those numbers and you've got, rationale for what you believe it should be. Although I do think it's clear, I don't really agree with that, but that's not up to me. So that's how we've approached the footprint of the building. The decks and the porch are not included in that site coverage. So the footprint of the building, the decks, we think they're important. We think they add a lot, but we're trying to maintain units of about 1,250 square feet, 2 bedrooms. So that's what this rectangle and this rectangle both work out to be. We think the decks make sense, and the decks add 2.74% to the site. The porch itself adds 1.49%. It's 129 square feet. One thing I do want to point out on this is that when we're dealing with these percentages, the amount of square footage that makes a difference, in my opinion, is relatively de minimis. In other words, the difference between 32.8% and 34.4% is 139 square feet. And if it's in a location like it fits in behind the elevator, I don't know if there's any significance to that in any way that really matters. But that's what we're here for, to have you explain to us. I think the other thing that we probably need some guidance on, David, can you put up the large front elevation? I mean, what we've done is we've used that elevation 109 at the curb in the center of the property, and we've measured up, I think you're saying 37 feet. But 37 feet is, it's obviously, this roof is lower than 37 feet. I guess you could argue that this roof is higher than 37 feet. I don't know how you want us to really look at that. Is it like, here's an eave and there's a ridge and there's a midpoint? Or do we end up figuring out what the heights of all the different roofs are and say this roof, this roof, this roof are under, this roof and this roof are over? That's something that would really be good to have some understanding of. If you see,
you got to go to the midpoint of the roof on the right.
Yeah, I think in this concept that there's a primary, in the design guidelines, that there's a primary volume, these, and then sort of secondary massing elements. Seems to me you would go to the midpoint of whatever the roof is that seems to be going over the principal mass of the building.
So you're talking about like this, I'm pointing to the north elevation where
yeah,
you have the roof of
that
the third floor.
I think. I mean, you're right.
Yeah,
When you have a building that has, where the massing is this animated, which is, I think, a good thing, you have this issue about, okay, what roof are we exactly measuring to?
So I think what Patty was explaining was that we're taking the datum point is the 109, which it's right at the center line of the property, the parcel going down the street. And if you measure 37 feet, and if you measure to that, taking, I think, Rob, in terms of the roof that you're talking about, is that it probably goes up about a third of the way. 37 feet is a third of the way up, not quite halfway up. And so if we were to, that's that's where we are right now. So, because I think if we were to kind of depress it even more into the ground, that would simply make the ground floor a little bit untenable because of how much of it is actually going to be in the dirt, and basically having to create a big, retaining wall in order to be able to get the windows above ground.
Yeah, I mean, when you came up with the 37 feet, I'm not really sure how that came up, and I guess I just scaling off it, it looks like we're at about 38 feet, maybe 38 foot 4 inches. Since this is not yet anything that's a code, since we are at this point under what the code permits, and this is the guideline which I understand you want to make the code, I guess I'm asking if we're close enough or if we have to try and shorten things up and squish it down somehow. That just doesn't seem like it's a great way to do design.
Well, I mean, in typically what I've experienced in other places and other municipalities is that because this site isn't exactly flat, it's actually curved. It's sloping in two directions,
right?
North to south, and then also east to west downhill. And so it's quite complex in terms of exactly what is the datum point that we should be taking. And because at one point at the site, the building, if you were to measure it from the grade, it would be, it's actually 20 feet underneath the ground. And then, so I think this is a difficult situation, a tricky situation. And I think we probably need your guidance in terms of, okay, I think this will work for us, and if we meet the kind of the more intent and the spirit of being able to make sure that the massing and then the roof heights are mimicking or compatible with the massing of the rest of the street.
Any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, so, we're in a funny position because Ed and I are very close to writing up a memo where we are going to suggest to the Board of Trustees the coverage number and the height, the 37 feet and so on. At the same time, so on the one hand, it feels funny to have the project that inspired this whole thing to not be right on the nose of these. On the other hand, I can imagine a situation where, let's pretend that we had adopted all these things and you came to us with this project that was maybe a little bit over the height and this a little bit over on the coverage in a way that seems insignificant. We might well be saying, this is close enough. You would have to go to the ZBA. We would make a referral to the ZBA to have them look at it and formally, we might say, we like this building. We think that the applicant should be given some leeway on these things, but you'd actually be getting a variance for this small coverage overage and this small height thing, and you'd probably get it. So I feel, for me, but I want to hear from the other board members. I feel like the project for me has gotten very close to what I think in terms of breaking down the scale of what is, still a pretty big building. I think it's for the AHRB to some extent now to sort of see how they feel about the way the massing is kind of animated here. But I guess I feel a little bit like, even though I intend to stick by those numbers, I think Ed and I intend to stick by those numbers in the code that we're about to submit for approval. I guess my own feeling is that this scheme is actually, close enough to certainly be out of pre-submission to go to the AHRB and to move on. But I want to hear from the other
Yeah, one quick thing, Rob. You would not necessarily have to send it to the ZBA. You do have your waivers.
Right, that's true.
So you could do that. In fact, I think for us to go to the ZBA, you would have to actually decide that while you could use the waivers, you would prefer to have them make that decision. Because last time when we went on, it wasn't on this, I forget what project it was, but the fact that it was on 100, when we went to the ZBA, they basically declined granting us a variance because the Board of Trustees had the authority to do it by waiver, and there was no need for them to grant a variance. And of course, that was the same deal. We were the first project coming in with a brand new code that had been done in the middle of a project we had been working on. So,
I agree with that. But before you go ahead and set a public hearing, I'm looking at a set of plans that is stamp received January 4th with no real dimensions except for on the floor plan. So I need to get a timely dimensioned plan so that I could write up for the board what they might be waiving.
agree, of course. And I mean, we could, if this is the direction, I didn't want to go too far on this, Ed.
Okay, that's fine.
So,
as long as we're clear, this is still pre.
Well, tonight's pre. I'd love to go formal in the next, and that would be contingent on us.
That's what I'm saying. We cannot go public hearing until I have a set of plans to review.
It couldn't be contingent upon receiving it in a timely fashion?
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So looking at this elevation, how come the garage is so down or deep?
It's quite far back. It's ramping. This view is meant to show the full door, but in fact,
right
if you drew a hard line along the sidewalk line, you would, yeah.
We just went very short cars.
There's a ramp. It's a ramp. You're seeing.
Yeah.
I see it now in the section.
Yeah.
Thank
Uh-huh.
So back to the question of public hearing. If the board members are, open to that, as long as I get it in a timely manner, that I can review it for zoning and have a sheet printed up of what they possibly have to give a waiver for, well before the deadline.
Yeah,
I don't have a problem with it. I'd like to see it move along too. I just
And
want
Patty-
to move along right.
Right.
But I also suggest, Rob, you're talking about giving it to the ARB. Maybe you want to contact Ayer and see if you want to have a joint meeting here on this instead of back and forth.
I think he's on tonight. I think
He is on.
I'm on and listening, and I welcome a joint meeting. So
good.
May I make a suggestion relative to? It sounds like you guys you're actually writing a code that deals with the specific area, and in my opinion, I'm not opinion, but more in my experience, in terms of how height limits are usually defined, especially when there's a lot of sloped areas, is that typically you take the grade plane, you draw a line. Usually the height is relative to the grade plane all the way through. You don't just take a midpoint,
right?
Because it could, because this one, because it slopes in two different directions, it's really difficult. And so, and I don't think that this would be the only case that this would be applying in this area. It looks like, all along Palisades Street, there will be other situations that do that.
We're going from the curb here, though.
Yeah, what happened, David, I appreciate what you're saying. And that kind of calculation, grade plane around the building is actually applies in most of the village. But we found on certain streets that when you, especially if you had we had a couple very steep sites on the east side of Main Street, where if you took if you did that calculation, you wound up with a building on facing Main Street that just seemed to tower over the other buildings on Main Street. And so the decision was made to, if what we really want is for it to look right, if we can all agree that the primary elevation, the one we care most about, is from Main Street, let's say, or in this case, Palisade Street, we're gonna decide what that height, apparent height, should be in that view, even though we know that it requires a bunch of gymnastics to make the rest of the building work if the site slopes back. So in most places in the village, we do what you're saying. There's a average grade plane, but there are certain places where it was creating buildings that were just apparently too tall for their neighbors.
Right. No, I'm not saying create an average, like, determine an average grade plane. What I'm saying is that you draw a line relative to the grade plane along the street, as well as along the sides of the parcel, so that whenever you look at, because typically what's in the way and back in the back of the parcel, if it's 37 feet above the street, if it's set 37 feet above the grade, it's going to be much higher than where it is on the street. But if you draw a line along that one side of the parcel relative to the grade and say this is the plane that you cannot break, then you would be forced to kind of step the roof back or the massing back as it, so that it's relative to the grade plane, rather than I'm not saying get an average and then say that that's the only height limit, but the height limit would be angled relative to the grade plane. So.
Right.
That is different, actually, Rob, if you think about it, from what the problem we had on Main Street. Because the problem on Main Street gave us a height that averaged to the building. If I understand what David's saying is, on the right side here, we would have to comply with the 37 feet at the point where it's relative to the grade. So it wouldn't work to have it up at the street. As we already have, this front is down below that. It's when you get it back. But also I think we're talking about 1.4 feet. So I think we can probably do something to try and tighten that down. Although we can't, as Laura was asking about the sunken garage door, I certainly don't want to go down any lower with the basement and the first floor is about where it really works. So we can take a look if there's something we can do in the rest of it. Maybe we can. I don't want to go with we can also solve part of that with a lower pitched roof, but I don't think that's always the best solution.
Yeah, no.
So we will play with that, but that's something that can come up in, we can make our case for it, at the next meeting, and you guys can say whether you agree with us or not. And if you don't agree with us, we try again to come up with something. I think the main thing here is that we've got a building that breaks itself up successfully. And I think obviously what we're going to do on this is a full SketchUp model. So you can see it from all the different angles and different views. As David was saying, even just this, when you see the shadows on it, that makes quite a difference. David, did you just do that while we were sitting here talking?
No, I did it about 5 minutes before the meeting started.
Okay.
But it's not that great of a rendering. But I think it's very important nice. It's important to see.
It's a nice drawing.
Yeah, it's important to see that the shadows are more. It will help reveal and pop out, help you to see what's forward and backwards. So.
Yep.
So where did we decide, Ed, on making the next meeting a public hearing? If he can get you the drawings that we would be showing to the public in time, we
Yeah,
could
if
do
you can
that.
get me complete drawings before the deadline,
Right.
so building has time to review.
Yeah. The deadline's next Thursday?
Just 3 weeks before the next meeting.
I think that's probably next Thursday, but I think we could do that.
Yep.
Well, I think this is a real positive step along the way here. I don't know, Ayer's on the meeting. I don't know if you, Ayer, whether you want to say anything on this or just wait till we.
I think I will comment that I agree with what's been said. It's a positive steps towards an interesting proposal. And now let's start, talking about architecture when it's due. I think let the process roll, and then we can do this joint meeting or present this project on the architecture review board, and we collect our thoughts.
Ayer, would you want us to submit for obviously not next Monday, but the 2 weeks after that?
I'm open to it, yes.
Okay, we can do that.
And of course, at some point,
I thought we were going to have a joint meeting here.
That we should.
We could do that too.
Yeah.
And then, of course, it may not be important for the next meeting, but at some point it'd be important to see the landscape strategy for the space between the foundation and the curb.
Yeah, it's critical.
Yeah.
And Ed, if I understand your policy as the new sheriff in many new places, if we're doing trees, you don't want us to put the trees in the street. You want us to put the trees on the property.
Your trees, your property.
You got it.
So I am going to tell Pat Harney to move this to item number 2 after the minutes. So because it's going to be a joint hearing.
Makes sense.
Sounds good to me. I'll invite the rest of the board members to join, whoever is available.
Good. Excellent. Good.
All right.
Great.
Progress, I think.
Yeah, I think a real good progress. And,
yeah, I think it's a big improvement.
Yeah, and congratulations, Patty, to bring David onto your team. I think that's helping help us.
Well, I don't know if that's a fair description, me bringing him onto my team. I think David stepping in and doing his magic as a person, as a principal of Anderson Kim.
Well,
That's just David T. Kim, architect.
David wears many hats.
Hi, Donna.
Yes, he does. Actually, I don't, Donna, do you know that you guys are kindred? David is a trustee now in Terrytown.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Well, it's nicely done.
Thank you.
Oh,
Okay, we move on.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Item number 4 on the agenda is 189 Broadway. I would be surprised if they're here, but Ed, do you know anything? This is the Howell property. I don't think he was prepared to come tonight.
Yeah, I don't see it on my agenda.
Or mine.
189, yeah, it's on the agenda.
it's on the agenda. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just,
Fine.
Ed, did you hear anything?
It was removed from the agenda. Did Pat not send you the amended agenda?
No.
So
I have the amended, yeah.
yeah, it's removed because
Okay.
Javier asked
Yeah.
not to present this.
Yeah, that's fine, but it is on most of our agendas. Okay, next item number 5, 21 Riverside Place, continuation of pre-submission conference for site plan review for proposed deck expansion, addition of off-street parking and change of use from single family to 2-family. I see Mr. Seacon there somewhere. There you are.
there's Stephen.
Good evening.
Good
I think
evening.
you're on mute.
No, he's good. I heard him.
No.
Anybody else's connection unstable? I'm getting these messages that my connection is unstable.
Me too.
Everybody else is good?
I hear you, Stephen. I hear you.
I can't hear him.
I mean, I'm a stable genius. A very
I-
stable
I was
genius.
just gonna say I was unstable. You ruined
Getting
my
the-
joke.
I hear Steve Brosnan, but I don't hear Steve Seacon.
Mrs. O'Neill, do you hear us?
Yes. Do you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes. Okay, good. So,
but we don't hear Stephen Seacon.
no. Oh, maybe now. No.
I'm going to kick you off and then bring you back on and see if that helps. Hold on. Okay, try now. No.
I wonder if his connection, like his internet or something.
Or his microphone's not working. Stephen, is there any way you can check and see if your mic is working properly?
Or calling phone?
How about now?
There you
Yeah.
go.
Yay.
Oh, okay. That's so weird. Okay. Sorry about that. Glad we fixed that. There was, I guess, a Bluetooth thing in the other room that commandeered my microphone. Okay.
Okay.
Good evening, everybody, and Happy New Year. I reckon that I should probably share my screen if I can get permission. So we have resubmitted our drawings. The zoning board was comfortable with the changes we made, and we're picking up the comments from Han Engineering. I responded to the memorandum from Mr. Palmer. There were 4 items in his memorandum, and some of them, have been addressed already. Some, I think, need a little bit of clarification and guidance, and be delighted to talk through these points. So where should I start?
Well,
Tell us what happened at the ZBA.
Can you repeat, please?
Tell us what happened at the ZBA.
So we modified the deck. We reduced the amount of the requested setback variances, and we reoriented the stairs. We have a larger buffer now, and the zoning board was comfortable with the changes that we made. The comments from Han Engineering also cited that the retaining wall, which is already existing, and then we're basically widening it. So we're increasing the nonconformity. So that it's in itself requires a variance. We never heard back if that had to be renoticed, since it was really sort of a kind of an academic situation. And they were looking to you for I think, your comfort level before they gave a full approval.
So you have to go back to ZBA, and what are you saying is non-compliant about the retaining wall?
Because it sits in the front yard and is higher than 4 feet.
Okay.
So, this is a function of widening the driveway. The retaining wall that currently supports the driveway is already non-conforming. And by virtue of the slope of the land, in order to get the second parking space here.
So as far as I recall, the limit of a freestanding wall or fence in the front yard is 4 feet, but a retaining wall, I've never heard limited to 4 feet. If that you need a retaining wall to support the driveway, the side walls of the driveway, I don't think they're limited to 4 feet. Dan, are you on?
I'll show you the side view.
Yes, Ed.
So did you write a denial on this?
No, this came up from Hans' comments when it was changed at the ZBA.
So
I don't believe we need a variance for that.
yeah, I mean, it's kind of academic in a certain way because
Need engineering for the wall, a 5-foot wall.
yeah, this is all unilock. It's all, with the, we'll provide whatever documentation you need for that. But that's.
And the height of the fence on top of the retaining wall is 3 foot?
Correct.
Okay.
And
so, Dan, what else are they going to ZBA for?
The deck, the setback on the deck in the front and the rear.
Okay.
It does say in our code that fences and walls shall not exceed a height of 4 feet in the front yards and 6 feet in sides and rear yards.
But there's a difference between a wall and a retaining wall.
And a retaining wall, correct.
it's not a
It's not a decorative wall.
Right. It's not a screen wall.
Right.
That serves for privacy. It's
right, and that's the intent of that code. So a supporting retaining wall is engineering.
Right.
What about the parking on this project? I know we talked about 2 or 3 spaces.
Right, and zoning. I'm sorry. Zoning understood. I'm sorry.
Didn't the ZBA, wasn't that part of your submission to ZBA?
Yes, they were comfortable with the 2 spaces because the overwhelming logic really is that this house, even as a single family house, had a legal accessory unit downstairs, which didn't have dedicated parking. So now there's really no difference in, per se in the demand for the cars. And we keep more off-street parking, which is a benefit, to both the owner and to the neighborhood. So they were comfortable with the 2 and, for that situation.
That's adding 1.
Right.
Yeah, and they also said that they had recently approved a similar, I don't know, allowance on the same street. I think it's 35 Riverside, where you know, they had asked for an allowance of just adding one more space for a second unit, and so that also came up.
Well, that doesn't mean there aren't more cars.
No, and they asked also just about in general, I guess, about parking on the street, and how, given now that, you know, if you live on the street, you need a sticker, or you can get a sticker, and people that don't live on the street can only park for a limited amount of time, and that has generally overall reduced the parking on the street.
Yeah, it's a hard street to park on. Well, in any case, where are we here?
So the Han engineering comments, you know, one was related to the retaining wall variance, which I believe from this discussion we may not even need. The second comment pertained to railing material and the retaining wall detail, which is shown on drawing A3. So this is the this is all made of AZEK. It is all sleeved and grouted into the top of the wall. The retaining wall itself
Did you say you've responded to his memo of the 31st?
I just got it this afternoon and I responded before the meeting.
Okay.
I'm happy to provide additional drawings, but you know, it's basically been addressed. So I don't, the third comment was protection for the existing drainage pipe, which should be added to the notes on the plan, which is fine. We'll amend that. We typically put those kind of notes in our specs. The fourth comment says that the project includes some pumps for handling domestic sewage. Therefore, backup power is recommended to prevent overflows during a power outage. I don't know how that pertains to planning board review, but you know, clearly, Amy, I think you have battery power backup for your pumps, right?
Yes, I do.
Right. So we don't have a generator, but we do have battery power. So that, you know, hopefully gets you through 6 to 12 hours of, you know, blackout. And then careful use of the bathroom.
It would seem to me that we're at a place where we could call for a public hearing at the next meeting.
Okay.
And I would so move. Is there a second on that? Please.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Look forward to seeing you again in a month.
Okay. Thank you all for your help.
Thank you.
Okay. Good night.
All right. Item number 6 on the agenda, 185, 191 Ashford Avenue, referral from the Board of Trustees for site plan review for proposed new multi-use building.
Is Christina here to present?
Yep.
Yes.
Here she is.
Christina, can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hey, Christina.
Hi, how are you?
New Year.
Happy New Year.
Indeed.
I'm here with Suzanne Levine. She's the project architect working with me, and also Andrew Cortese, who's the owner and principal of Cortese Construction. And we're here to show you our first set of drawings. We have been to the Board of Trustees, and we submitted the drawings that we reviewed with the board, but we also have another scheme, Scheme B, because since that meeting, we have looked at other ideas to respond to their comments. But I'd like to just take you through the submission that we gave to you, which is the same as what we gave to the BOT, just so you can see what we started with. And Suzanne is setting up the drawings here. Hold on a second.
Good.
Can you see the drawings? No?
Yes.
You can, good.
Yeah, mixed use.
It's like half of it.
I only see part of it.
Oh, really? Okay. You know, I went into the full screen mode. Hold on a second. I'm gonna stop the share. One more time. How's that? Is that better?
That's better.
Yep,
Yes.
better.
Great.
Yep.
Okay, you're seeing one image of a design that we came up with. It really was based on the idea that there is there are two buildings on the site right now, and one of them has more of a commercial look with a very large cornice, and we wanted to see if we would like to get the same look or maybe reuse that cornice and restore part of the building. That was our starting point. And we set up our site plans. Maybe next slide, Suzanne. Okay, actually, I want to, before we get into our site plan, just to give you, show you our zoning data. This is the downtown transitional district. We have, we're required to have 60% maximum coverage, and we have a design that is at 45%. We don't want to max out the property. We want to preserve the open space, especially use the parking area that already exists there. We have impervious coverage that is now over the 80%, and we're going to be bringing it down to 80. We're planning to meet the zoning code in every way we can. The height and bulk and the height and the coverage and all the setbacks should be conforming, except for one where we're extending the non-conforming wall of the building. And we're also planning to meet all the parking that's required for the new building. We're proposing a building that will have this, our plan, Scheme A, this scheme which I'm going to show you is for 9 units, one of which will be a handicap, will be affordable housing, and also 2 retail units on the ground floor. Right now, the existing building is 3 retail units with 2 residential above. Next slide, Suzanne. This is our location map to show you 185, 191. There are 2 buildings there. And that exist. And then there's this open space around it, which is really, most of it is a parking lot. This is the old 2-story commercial, building, mixed use building that has 2 retail, I said 2 retail below and residential above. And to the right is a small 1-story building. We're planning to take that building down because it's in terrible shape. This building here, we want to see if we can reuse part of it. And there are some, these are images of the site where you see, this is one of the buildings on the street that really looks more like a downtown building. Next door, there are a lot of these gabled 2- and 3-family houses. And these are just some other pictures down below showing you images of the site. We can go back to our residential units. I'd like to just show you the site and how, and these photographs just to show the view of the site on the left side, the two-story building. And then as you go and look the other way towards the building, these are the views looking down Ashford Avenue. Next slide. This is our neighborhood plan. This is showing, you can see the shapes of the buildings. There's lots of 2 and 3 family buildings. This site has one of the more little larger commercial buildings, but a lot of the buildings are just all different sizes, mostly 2 and 3 story buildings. Across the street is the development that has the 3, I think there are 3 townhouses across the street. Okay, next slide.
That's on the same side of the street.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's right
It is
here.
on the same
This is-
side.
Yeah, this is the 3 units there.
I'm sorry. Yes, of course. Same time. Okay. And these are just, this is our, just different views of the surrounding properties. You know, where you have a mix of residential and some commercial. This probably had more commercial buildings years ago, but the downtown's been shrinking. And we are aware that there's, this is probably mostly residential here. So next slide, Suzanne. This is our streetscape. We're showing on the upper line the photographs of the building and the neighboring buildings on the left and on the right, and down below the drawings of the buildings. We're working with a 2-story building with a small building to the right, and we're planning to take that building down and see if we can extend the building and try to see if we want to save some of the components of the building. It gives it some history and, you know, some story to tell about what was there before. And then to the right, you just see some of the other buildings. There's quite a mix. There's a firehouse. There's a bigger residential development, and down below, across the street, the smaller 2 and 2.5 story houses.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So in this elevation that you're showing in the existing versus the new, in the existing, it seems like the 2 stories that exist to the left of that home, it seems to be the same height. But in the drawing below it, it seems like it's almost the same height again, but it's 3 stories, the new building. Is that correct or not?
Yes. I just want to start with the context. This is our proposed building down below, and we're adding a story on top.
So it would be much
These
higher.
photographs might not be in scale
Yeah,
with each
one's a-
other.
Yeah, they're not.
The residential building is set further back, and these are photographs, so the appearance of height is not accurate.
Okay.
Yeah,
These drive by there all the time, and I'm like, it's yeah, it would be way higher.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, so just going over what the site is, what the context is, how we have a variety of buildings, and we're going to be working on a way to create 9 residential units. This scheme is 9 with 2 retail down below. I'd like to show the site plan, Suzanne. This is our site plan, and the building that's in purple on the left is the existing 2-story building. Our plan is to extend that building up to add a 3rd floor. And the light purple to the right is the old building that we'd like to take down, which is now the nail salon. Wrapping around the back is an addition, is where we want to expand the building. It's going to come out and over the parking. And then you see the brown area is actually a roof deck above. The idea is that we want to use the parking that exists to serve this building. It's a nice site in that it has parking, and it will allow us to do 9 to 11 units and meet the parking requirement. And it also avoids any kind of excavation to do a garage below the building. This is a zone that allows multifamily, commercial, and we're showing here a footprint that gives us a building coverage of 45%. And so we're under the 60% max. This site plan is also showing our required setbacks. So in this zone, we have a 0 setback in the front. We're required to have 5 feet on the sides. On one side, we have quite a large setback, but on the other side, to keep the old building, that building is non-conforming. So we would need a variance to extend a non-conforming wall. And in the back, our setback requirement, I think, is 25 feet. Yeah. And we're way beyond that. And I'd like to show you just the plans that we generated for our Scheme A. These plans are showing retail spaces in the front with 1 unit on the ground floor in the back. The shape of the building is really to allow us to work with the parking that exists on the site or get a similar layout, because we're able to get 22 spaces, which satisfies the code for the retail and the residential space. We have a center entrance, egress stairs, and an elevator. Also in this layout, we would have the affordable unit on this level. On the second floor, we are keeping the building on the left side is actually the existing building that we want to keep, and then we've added by extending it to the right. So you see it says existing building below that's 50 feet wide. We've extended it so that we've added a center bay and then another 50 feet. And that was so that we could get 4 units on this level. We have, the units are all 2-bedroom, 2-bath, and they vary from 1,200 to 1,350 square feet. And then in the back is where we want to have some outdoor space. So we do have roof decks for the 2 units that are in the back of the building. On the next plan, the 3rd floor is very similar to the 2nd floor, 4 units, roof decks in the back. And then on our roof plan, next plan, we're planning to have some private decks and 1 common roof deck. Next plan. These are the elevations that work with this Scheme A. We at the time, this is what we explored originally to see if we could get a building that might have a similar cornice or tie in with the building that was there before, but adding another floor and then having retail spaces at the ground level. Next slide. And these are the side, west, and the east elevations. Next slide, and the east, and then the rear showing parking in the back. Now, yeah, since then, maybe we actually decided to look at another scheme because we really felt that retail is not going to work here. And we would like to have the building to be all residential. And especially since as we explore the neighborhood, it looks to me that, retail doesn't even work well, it's not doing well. And the whole neighborhood is more residential. So we decided this scheme would be all residential. And we also want to break up the mass of the building so that we have we have no more than a 2-story wall before we have some kind of level. The 3rd floor is tucked into some kind of roof line, which is what most of the houses have. Some of them are gables, but the houses in the area, most of them, the 3rd floor is tucked in the roof line. And we also would like to explore breaking up the bays of the building so that it looks like we may have, it looks like a complex of different buildings with maybe slightly different materials and not have the same common aligned facades. There's some jogs so that we break up the mass in terms of length as well as height. Now this sketch goes with a different plan, which we have a first floor. Oh, this is our elevation that shows this idea that maybe we'll have a building on the left that keeps that two-story building with that cornice, even though we may have to rebuild that cornice, and then have a third floor tucked in a mansard level, a middle bay that has set back, and which would have the entry to the building, and then another building, what looks like another building at the end. And we have a floor plan after this slide just to show you how that would be laid out. If we went with this scheme, we could have 11 units rather than 9. And we would, instead of having retail in the front, we would actually have all residential. So our ground floor plan would look like this, where we have 3 units on the ground or the first floor, and then 4 on the second and 4 on the third, giving us a total of 11. And they would vary from like 1,100 to 1,400 square feet. Most of them are 2-bedroom, 2-bath, and there would be 2 affordable units in this scheme. So since this is our first meeting with you, we wanted to just get your feedback, and based on what we have so far, we're eager to hear your comments. Please let me know if you have any questions.
Well, I just personally, I think it would be nice if they're all residential. I think having retail just brings up a lot of parking problems and in and out problems, and I think all residential would be very helpful.
Is there a guideline for this district regarding residential? Is there any reason there should be residential there?
You're allowed commercial on the first floor, like in the downtown business, but in the downtown transition, you're also allowed to do all residential.
All right, and I have to say, Christina, that I feel like that scheme 1 is out of scale for the area a little bit, and scheme 2 feels better from that standpoint. I'm not sure this is the best way to do it, but I definitely feel like this is addressing that issue, and I encourage further study of that issue.
My only question is whether you think that the mansard roof is in keeping with the other buildings in that neighborhood.
You know, I think what we like the idea of having a roof, having the third floor tucked in a roof line, and we could explore gables. There are different ways to do that. This is just one idea we're showing you. If you want to see the pattern in the neighborhood, you can see there's so many different shapes here. Suzanne just put them up. There's flat, there's gables, probably there. I don't see a mansard here. We've seen them in other places in the village, but maybe not. There's some hip roofs. So there's quite a variety, but we can look at a different shape up there.
It's a little more formal look than what's in the neighborhood.
Yeah. Okay.
I have to say, Christina, I've been driving that road on Ashford and that view for 15 years.
Okay.
And believe me, I look at that every day and I think to myself, you know, all those homes that they're kind of set back. And then when this was proposed, I thought, oh, like, how can you have a building that's right on the street that close and 3 stories? So the 3-story thing kind of throws me for a loop because as you drive up, because it slopes up that road, you see like if it's 3 stories, it's it seems really large. It seems very massive. And so for me, I was like, okay, well, maybe if it's 3 stories, then maybe the 3rd story needs to be set back. I mean, I'm not sure what the answer is. I just know that it's very soothing for me to drive up that Ashford Avenue to go to the Journey Estate every morning. And that spot in particular has become very sensitive to me. I actually have always looked at that because it's in such disarray right now and it's like an eyesore. So I'm happy that it is going to be developed into something more beautiful. But it also, imagine in this view right now that you have, having another story there. Because the sun in the morning, I don't know how to describe it. Over the year or the seasons, the sun sets differently, and I appreciate this view, and now I'm like, oh, it's going to be blocked. The building seems very massive.
We have another scheme. We're showing you just 2 tonight, but we are also looking at setting back the 3rd floor.
Right, but
and the building.
My opinion, yeah. I'm just saying personally, I'm really sensitive. I was surprised. I was like, oh, okay, this building is going to be renovated, and I'm glad that it is. But I'm just like, ooh, 3 stories, wow, because all the other homes, and it's a mishmash of different buildings. But on the other hand, it seems like they're mostly residential, and they are set back. This particular building seems to be right on the street. So I feel like if you start to build it up more on a third story, it starts to affect how it encroaches on the streetscape, and also how it feels a little bit out of character to the rest of the street, if that makes sense.
I agree with Laura. I feel like first of all, I think that the first scheme, I think that these second schemes that are all residential, and I know that they're preliminary sketches and so on, but I don't think they're as attractive as the earlier schemes where you're trying to incorporate the existing building. I think that those first elevations that you showed us are actually the most attractive, even though I understand there may be a problem with having retail there and having it work. I mean, there's no point in forcing someone to do ground floor retail if it's just going to be empty. On the other hand, the elevation that you showed of the building that was all residential, if you go to that elevation, looks a little mean to me. It looks a little, if you go to the next image, this looks a little fortress-like. I have a feeling you would be able to soften it. But I guess the scheme, and it sounds like you were contemplating this, if you go to your first scheme, the 3-story scheme, where you incorporate the existing building, I agree with Laura entirely that there's something about as you drive up to that turn and you make that turn. I was trying to visualize a 3-story building there, and it seemed like it might be too big. But what I thought was that I could imagine a scheme where there was a 3-story scheme where there was a significant setback between the 2nd and 3rd floors. I think that could do a lot to mitigating this apparent scale problem that everybody's kind of focusing on. And I like that more than the mansard roof. I'm not a big fan. I don't know. It's just it hasn't. Maybe it's because there are a lot of projects where it hasn't been done very well in the village. But I'm not a big fan of the mansard roof, and it doesn't really. I don't know. I feel like it's just not a great solution to this massing problem. I would be interested to see something close to your first scheme, but where there was a real setback at the 3rd floor, like terrace size setback, 5 feet, something like that, not just a few inches to to kind of break up the massing, but an honest to God change in massing there, I think could work. And it could work both for the scheme where you have retail on the ground floor, your first scheme. It could also work for the residential one. I just think if you go all residential, that ground floor elevation needs to feel more street friendly. It doesn't feel very pedestrian friendly. You know, somebody walking by it, it doesn't feel very. It looks kind of a little bit too closed for me.
I was just going to share a preliminary drawing where we had that setback, and I'm sorry, it's in my my CAD file. Can you see the CAD file? So this, we were exploring that this is the side view as you're driving up Ashford, keeping this 2-story building and possibly setting back a 3rd floor. Is that something?
Well, which view is this? Is a cross-sectional view, right?
No, this is actually this is the side elevation as you're driving.
Right. Can you scoot it over to the left slightly? I'm not quite.
You're not seeing it.
I'm not seeing the right-hand side of your.
Oh, sorry. Let's try this again.
That's okay. I can also minimize the view of the board.
How about
Hey,
now?
I have a question for Rob.
So, wait, just one second.
Yeah.
So. Right. Okay. Right. So here's the side elevation.
Yeah. So
and what does that? And what does that look like from the front, from Ashford Avenue?
Forgive my drawing here because it's not laid out. So
yeah. No. Okay.
Yeah.
Now you're seeing all of my. It's crossed out here, but it would look something like this. This is
right.
There we go. So this is this is a 2-story building, and this would be the setback. This would be set back even further.
Yeah, I could imagine something like that working. I would say, and I realize this is super preliminary, I think the ground floor elevation here still looks obviously get kind of mean and sterile, but I'm sure you would develop that.
Hey Rob, I have a question.
Yeah.
I have a question for Rob.
Yeah.
The work that you did on Palisade Street, in terms of the levels moving from the sidewalk towards the front of the building. If you look at the other buildings along Ashford, the residential buildings, they're somewhat of the same condition. There's a little bit of business in between the sidewalk and where the front of the building is. It's either a porch or it's a little garden area or something.
Right.
And, in a world where you're just going to raise that existing building, you might want to look at that. But I do like the idea of reusing at least part of that existing building, because it's
that's
not
a cool idea.
But how would you address that in terms of, using the existing building, but on the right hand side do some kind of setback or something where it was more, I don't know, you don't want to make a Franken building either, but
it's a challenge because we we could take all the buildings down, but we thought that building on the left has some character and history, and we probably it's not in terrible shape, and so we thought we would like to save it, and because it tells you a little bit of the history of that area, but the challenge is how do we work with it? How do we don't want to? Yeah.
I really
agree that you should save it.
I applaud the idea of saving, and I think it'll make your building more interesting. I guess what I'm saying is maybe you could do your scheme of building next to it, but then just have the 3rd story set back enough so that it mitigates this kind of scale issue that Laura is talking about, which I agree with her on that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, we're exploring that idea. We're really looking into that, and I also understand when you lose the storefront window, it's not as friendly, and
right.
So we're thinking about how do we really make that work if we want to save that building? So, maybe there is a way to make it still feel like a storefront, but it's a residential use, or,
Right.
people are working at home now. Maybe it's a live-work situation.
Yeah,
I'm not
exactly.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Could it be, and also the whole ground floor doesn't have to be retail, right? You could keep the retail space in the existing building, and then to the right, you could have a different kind of treatment that was more, as you were saying, more residential. So it's not like you have to commit to having retail across the entire bottom of the building, right? You could kind of mix it up.
Yeah.
I just think that what's nice about this elevation is that, you have these big glass openings onto the sidewalk, which helps, since you're right up against the edge of the sidewalk, it helps kind of soften it. But you could probably do something, like you're saying, residentially as well. You could, probably couldn't be as open, but you could probably, I'm sure, figure out a way to do something, like you said, a home office, or I'm not sure, figure out a way to make it.
Gym or common space on the front of the existing.
Or yeah, maybe. We even thought about, we actually, I didn't know how many ideas we should tell you about tonight, but we are really looking at lots of ideas, like setting it back. Also, the building on the right can be something very different.
Right.
But, we know the street is such a hodgepodge that I'm not sure how much, I'm not sure if I feel like it needs to have integrity as one whole design in some ways. Although if we keep the old building, it already has, that big cornice, and it has its own traditional downtown building look,
Right.
So it's a challenge. And the reason why the building, one advantage to keeping this building also on the property line in the front, at least the existing, to keep that, is it gives us the parking we need in the back,
Right.
We can set the building to the right back a little, somewhat. But one thing that's really nice about this site, it has the parking tucked in around it in the back, so that we don't have to have a large excavation to put it under the building. And so we're trying to work with that.
Yeah.
I guess the next thing for me is like, what does that area of Ashford Avenue mean to our village? Because there are these, like, you have these delis, you have these, the grooming salon is there.
Right. There's a little strip mall.
Like little hodgepodge, little buildings, but like there is no consistency of what that road is. It's like, okay, so I honestly have to say I've never stopped at any of those places on Ashford Avenue. I've been here 20 years, and it's not because I don't want to. It's just like, I don't feel I don't have the need to go there, and it's not convenient. So I wonder, like, how does retail even? How do they there?
I can speak up a bit because I live in that neighborhood, and the delis are used, the nail salons are used by the neighborhood generally.
Right.
A lot of people coming from outside, but the neighborhood does.
No, that's great. Like, believe me, that's wonderful. And I'm glad that they're there, and I'm glad, but it's like, I almost think like, okay, so, and I'm not saying they shouldn't be there, but how can we make it so that people do want to stop there? Or how do we make it so that it's more not just kind of thrown in there, but like, it becomes a part of a certain entity of that street or that part of town? I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there.
Right.
So way back when, that was like a separate hamlet, and that was the downtown of that neighborhood.
Wow, is that true?
The bowling alley was there.
Scappies was
Scappies.
there.
That was like
Scappies.
the heart of that
Great.
neighborhood. Yeah.
Yeah, so Scappies was there, know.
I mean, the fire department is there, and I just realized, like, sitting at a light that, 1880 I think it was, or 1883.
Yeah. It's
Like it's
so
like
since, the incorporation of Dobbs Ferry and, the main downtown became more popular, and all the little hamlets, that one, and then Chauncey also started to shrink. So, it's the way it's going. So it makes sense to be more residential, because
right.
it's just not
And there's some
economically feasible.
there's some really nice little houses along there. And recently one of them, which I never really even noticed until they renovated, and I was like, oh wow, that's really cool. Like they restored it, this one house on Ashford Avenue, right in that area. And I was just like, oh, that's really cool. Like, so I think it's really refreshing to see new revitalization of these existing buildings. But I also wonder, like, how practical is it to make it all retail? Or I think it's a better choice. Maybe like half retail, half like the nail salon becomes residential, and make it more in respect to how the rest of the how all the other housing on that. And it's because there is a repetition of the setbacks of the homes and the kind of types of homes and the stories that they are. So I think it would be nice if there was some kind of a resolution of retail and residential in that one space, if it's possible.
Yeah.
Which I think it can be,
Mm-hmm.
So I have a slightly different take on the massing issue. I whipped out Google Maps and took a drive down Ashford. And if you just get a little bit farther down Ashford, even by Lafergie, you've got 3-story buildings right on the street, but they're much narrower.
Yeah.
So for me, you've got a whole bunch of examples of 3-story buildings that are right on the sidewalk, but they're about a quarter of the width of what we're looking at right now.
But Alan, you also have to drive down Ashford to actually experience it. Because if you look at Google Maps, you get a different perspective than actually driving down there. Because I actually thought about that today when I was looking at those 3-story buildings, and I thought they don't feel as massive when you're driving in your car. To me, anyway. But I appreciate you did Google Maps.
You know what? Also, just when it's a little bit farther south, there's the hospital, and the hospital's huge, right? It's just the hospital is just another block to the south on this.
Yeah,
map.
but it's way off the road.
Yeah, but I was going to say it's not really. It doesn't really impact Ashford Avenue, although that yellow thing that they have on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
What is that?
It's
That's temporary, and I'm doing air quotes right now around temporary oil tank.
Because it's been there forever.
It's been there for about a year. Yeah, it's a problem. They're trying to get new gas in there.
Okay.
So we're being incredibly clear for
She knows exactly what to do now.
I want to ask a question.
Christine knows exactly what we're thinking here.
But I would just like to ask one question, if you don't mind. I wonder how the board feels about keeping the old building that's there. Because what's challenging for us is to make that decision on whether we should try to preserve it in one way or another. If we did not do that, we could probably come up with a building that has, looks more like a 2.5-story building with gabled roofs, like a lot of the other houses on the street. Because I think this building could be an opportunity to try to give some consistency to the street. But if we keep the old building, because we say it's significant or it has some, some story to it about the past, then it becomes more challenging to how we tie in our new building with it.
So you're
Well, I'm
keeping
not
the
going to the old building.
more green construction, without a doubt. You know,
Yeah.
if you rip it all down and
Right.
rebuild, it's, you know.
You also lose the
Challenging.
non-conformity, the pre-existing.
Yes,
non-conformity.
yes. I'm just curious if how you feel about that, keeping that building, because that's the one building that's left that has some commercial space in it. Well, there's a few others, but there aren't too many left. And you know, if we can get the look of a display on the first floor, maybe, and still do the residential, maybe it is nice because it has some character and it has some history. You know, I always feel like if you tear everything down, then you lose your history. You know, you lose. So I guess if you all think we should try to work with it, we're gonna keep on that path.
Yeah, I think I agree that you
Yeah.
should try to keep it, use it,
Okay.
work with it.
Yep.
But other than being an old building, it doesn't have any particular history, I don't think. From my
I don't feel
knowledge-
strongly either way. And my question would be, why not explore a townhouse look? You know, there's other, that would fit the neighborhood better than anything else, I would think.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't like townhouses there.
A lot of mixed signals here.
A lot of different
Yeah,
opinions.
I'm sure this is very helpful.
Well, actually, you know, we've been doing a lot of townhouses lately, and I think this idea of having housing that is 2-bedroom, 2-bath, and handicap accessible, you know, probably gives you a different kind of housing than a townhouse, you know, and it just more variety, perhaps. I mean, I think you could do townhouses here too, but I know that our goal is to try to see if we can get this kind of unit, like a condominium type unit, to work. But we'll consider it. And I understand very much so that narrow bay that you often see in the older buildings. And we're also looking at that idea.
Christina, can I suggest that I know at the BOT, and Donna, you could back me up on this, you know, a lot of the trustees expressed some serious interest at joint meetings here.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we're talking about exploring totally new ideas here. Maybe next time you come back with several options, we could have the Board of Trustees here too. So you're not, you know, spinning your wheels too far and then, you know, the approving board doesn't agree with this board. What do you think, Donna?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
I mean,
we'll do another-
just, you know, the board had concerns with the initial, you probably read the transcript, but the board had issues with not with having retail there, but with the look of the building that was being built, looked like it belonged more in our downtown than on that area of Ashford Avenue. So that's where we asked for, it'd be more of a design issue, more of a, you know, architectural fixtures on that to make it look that it fits in more with that neighborhood. But there wasn't an issue with there being retail space there. I don't know if it's, you know.
I think a lot of people asked for it to be a little softer to the property to the left, but you know, that is the borderline of the downtown transition and the residential zone. So that's what DT is for, to transition from commercial to residential. So, you know, I think you're getting a lot of different messages here, and I just want to get all the players involved so you're not wasting time.
If you look at the DT zone on the south side of Main Street, all commercial on the first floor, pretty much, isn't it? And then housing up above. There's a few that are just are purely residential. It's true.
Yeah. And most of them have, a lot of them have converted their first floor commercial to residential.
Right.
There's a lot of that are all residential in the DT on the south of Main Street.
Mm-hmm.
We took a look at other examples of buildings in the DT zone. Yeah, and we did find some that were all residential. And
It's a mix.
but they're bigger down there. Those buildings I think are bigger.
Yeah.
Right.
There's some 4-story buildings down there.
Yes.
It's zoned the same, but it's really not the same kind of district at all.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to come up with some more options to show you next time. If you're open to it, we really like to show you a few of the options we're studying instead of just one scheme.
Sure.
Yeah. That's fun.
And I'm never sure how much you're open to that, but we would love to share with you, the ideas we're looking at, so we can do that. And yeah, it'd be great to get more than one board looking at it at a time, so that we don't go through a long process and then start again. But that would be great.
Yeah.
Good. Good. We look forward to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Just
thank
let
you
us
for
know.
the presentation. We'll see you. We'll see you next month. I'm sure. I don't know if you'll be getting something in to meet the deadline for next month. But
Well, we're already having a joint session with the AHRB at the next planning board meeting, so they're already there.
AHRB, but then we're going to pull in the BOT for this one. So we'll move this one up to right after Patty's. So we don't have to keep the trustees up too late.
yeah. Okay. Thank you, Christina.
Thank you.
Welcome. Thanks so much.
Thank you, guys.
Your ideas and comments. See you next time.
Mr. Chairman, just I got a note from Patty, and he's probably right. I think if we wanted to put 156 Palisade on the next agenda for a public hearing, on the condition that he deliver the plans, I think we need to have a vote to do that. I mean, we could make it, we could schedule, in order to schedule the public hearing, I think we'll need a vote.
Excuse me, don't the plans have to be available to the public
Well,
before the public hearing?
Yes, that was the condition, that the plans came in before the deadline.
Right.
And
But there
then
hasn't been a vote yet. That's
you could open a public hearing at
Okay.
the next meeting, but you're making a motion to call for a public hearing at the next meeting.
Correct.
I think we missed that.
Right.
So
And again, it would be,
somebody's gonna make a motion.
it would be subject to delivery of the plans to Ed prior to the deadline for the next meeting.
Okay. Is that in motion? So moved.
Second?
All in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
Okay.
You're welcome. Okay,
We have more.
21.
Item number 6. No.
No, 5.
No.
5.
21 Riverside Place. No, we did that. Come on.
Number 6 is 398 Ashford.
Yeah.
Right.
Item number 7, 398 Ashford Avenue, pre-submission conference for site plan
Oh.
review.
David, can you hear us?
Here I am. How are you?
Hi.
All right. I feel like I got the graveyard shift.
Oh, no. We get warmed up at this point.
You guys really know how to burn the midnight oil here. Okay. Well, I appreciate the time, and I know it's late, but I'll just how familiar are you guys with 398 Ashford? And would you like me to share my screen?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Okay. Give me a second here.
Yeah, I'm a little unclear about the scope of this project. Isn't there a structure there now?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it seems there is yes, there is a structure here right now. There's actually no change that's happening to the structure itself on the exterior side. There's 3 retail units. It's interesting because I've learned a bunch just listening for the past hour and a half to different issues around retail, residential, and you know, parking, and some of the comments that were made for 21 Riverside and 185 Ashford. So there's 3 retail units right now, and it's obviously not a great area for retail considering it's right by the highway, and it was probably retail when Ashford Avenue went all the way into Ardsley. So the topic here is to change those 3 retail units into residential units. That's number 1. And number 2 is, in order to accommodate the residential units, there is a proposal to add 2 parking spaces in front of the building where there's currently a very wide sidewalk, and there's the ability to put 2 parking spaces there, which will kind of just overall ease the parking demand and the requirements for the residential units. I'll still need a waiver because I still won't have enough parking, but it'll definitely add 2 dedicated spaces, which would make it easier. So and in tandem with the parking, there's currently a gravel lot there right now. There's the proposal to pave it, to pave that area, and in paving that area, I have the drainage plan for the water runoff over here, and that's what I want to review. So there's essentially 3 issues. It's the parking, the paving, and the change of use that are being discussed tonight, and I'd love your feedback and comments on that.
Well, as I recall, the part of Ashford that comes in front of the building there is pretty active.
Very active. I mean, and that's one of the reasons why I think the change of use is good. If that was a nail salon or a flower shop, and you know, similar to what the issue was with 21 Riverside, not exactly the same, but you know, the point is to ease the traffic in that area. If it was commercial, it would be a lot more challenging with the folks getting on and off the highway. If it was an apartment, it would be a person leaving in the morning and coming back in the afternoon, essentially. And those are small apartments as well. So we're talking about glorified studios that those units would be. 2 of them are pretty small, and the other one is slightly larger, but still it's a 2-bedroom, and it's a small 2-bedroom, and kind of, you know, the other ones are essentially studio 1-bedrooms effectively. So, you know, I think the move to residential is better for the traffic considering where it is. And as we've discussed, it probably used to be a great commercial space, you know, when the road went all the way through. But you fast forward to today, it's not a great use of the space to keep that commercial.
So sorry, I just missed this though. What is the plan for the gravel lot that's to the west of the building?
Pave it. It would be to pave it.
And and to park it?
Yeah, I mean, it's currently parking right now. I just want it to be more, you know, just easier to shovel the snow, easier for people to pull in and out.
And how many spaces can you get? Theoretically, how many spaces do you need? And how many can you get on that?
So here you have a little bit of an overlay. If it's like valet style, just for the sake of conversation, you can probably get between, about 8 spaces in total.
No.
What?
That meaning what? Like, so if I was living there and I was gonna park my car, how many spaces are there available for me to park?
So, it's 1 per unit, and it would be 8 units in the building.
So we have to find 8 spaces somehow. And in order to hit that, you want to use those 2 that are on the street there.
Right now, for example, there is legal street parking. It's just a terrible place to park. And
Right.
And it was recommended to me to actually carve up the sidewalk and push it back a little bit, and which is actually, I think it's actually a great idea. I still don't love those spaces, and I would want them to be allocated exclusively to the building in order for it to, and obviously it would be on my cost to redo that entire sidewalk and that curb over there, and in compliance and in accordance with what with the Dobbs Ferry Road
Right.
requirements, et cetera, and things like that. But it would give me 2 more spaces, and it would make it easier for my tenants as well, and it wouldn't put the burden onto Northfield or some of the other areas where there is street parking, but it's definitely not, I'm trying to lessen the burden on the neighborhood.
Right.
So the parking lot that you're offering right now, you're saying you get 6 spots in there?
I'm saying you can park 6 cars there, yes.
But if it's only 1 spot per unit, then how do you arrange for somebody to get in and out if they're parked?
They set up a WhatsApp group and they know who's leaving when. Listen, it's definitely not the most convenient, but it's hard to find off-street parking in that area in general. And this is this lot is not the way it was originally. It's not the original dimensions of when it was built. It lost the entire back area when the overpass was built. So it's a matter of how do we maximize the opportunity and how do we maximize the space right now? What's the best use of the building for Dobbs Ferry, for the area? And I mean, if I heard you saying, Laura, you've been here for 20 years. The building is hopefully hopefully everyone can see that it's in a lot better condition than it looked for many, many years when it was falling apart.
Right.
We've made a lot of improvements, and I've gotten a lot of positive feedback in general from not just the appearance but the upkeep of the building. And we're trying to bringing 3 more units to the retail level seems to be the best use of that space. And we're trying to figure out how to maximize the parking situation. It's not a easy puzzle to solve, but this is one way of bringing more off-street parking. It's on-street parking, but more parking to that, to this very, strangely shaped and strange location island of a building.
Mm-hmm.
So some history, this building, like David says, was here a long time before the Parkway and Thruway came through. And, that street, that was Ashford Avenue, went straight through into Adamant Square and Ardsley. So there was a lot of little stores here. And, then the Parkway came in and they began to die off and, the overpass went behind here. So the apartments on the 2nd and 3rd floors are all existing, so are grandfathered in for parking. So the change of use of the 3 first floor units would require the additional, I believe they would need 4 by code. So because there was 2 on the street, but were very dangerous because they're sort of in the path of the entrance to the Parkway, we suggested at the Board of Trustees that Mr. Rothbart, take some of that sidewalk, cut it in, and get those 2 parked cars out of that path onto the Parkway entrance.
Right.
And then he had 4, so he has to keep those, and those are the 4 for the existing. So then as you see, you're allowed by code to give him credit for those 2 street ones. Then he has 1 the additional one in the parking that he's paving now, which would give him 3. And then a third one that's sort of tandem behind that one. But as you can see, his property line cuts the corner off there, so that by code, that 4th one couldn't be counted because it's not fully on his property. So you would have to give him a waiver for 1.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it's a general idea that the small affordable apartments are much better help to the village than empty storefronts.
Yeah.
Well, what about pileups?
You could use 1 pileup.
Sorry, what's a pileup? My apologies.
Payment in lieu of parking.
Oh, okay.
Which would cost you $2,500 for the 1 space if they give you credit for the 2 on the street.
Yeah. Yeah. Ed and I spoke about that, and I'm yeah. I mean, I think that's the idea essentially. And you know, yeah. So, is there any other questions around the drainage, around the paving that that I may be able to answer? Any thoughts on that? These are the engineering drawings.
George have some comments about engineering?
Yeah, we actually sent over a memo, which the applicant should have. And we had a number of comments. So if they could go through them, that would be helpful.
Oh, I don't know. I think you only had 44 comments.
Want to hit the highlights, George? Or?
I only made it through about 10, and then I cashed in my chips.
Yeah, the drainage is an issue, and then as mentioned earlier, these spots go on to what seems to be village property. So I'm not sure how that would work.
Board of Trustees, we asked Mr. Rothbard to do a title search on that property, and there hasn't been any success. It's nobody seems to want to take claim to it, so he's just sort of going to park on it. But we're not counting it officially, that back one.
So it's not village property. It's
we don't know.
Oh, we don't know.
Yeah,
okay.
I did contact multiple title companies, and they all said it's and I went down to Newburgh, and I went down to White Plains, and I've definitely put in my concerted effort. And they said when the land went back and forth. Sorry?
The Board of Trustees was thinking about giving them an easement to park there if we could prove it was ours. But since we don't know, it's just sort of like there.
I think my grandfather won that in a card game in 1996.
Dave, you want to talk to Steve?
Steve, you and I, we need to talk this out a little bit. Yeah. So George, the highlights, yeah, because there was a lot of comments, and I think there was maybe some context around the history of the building, because that might have fueled some of those comments. But yeah, I think I definitely would like to get the support to make this happen. I've been waiting a long time for this. I have 5 tenants in the building right now who would really love to have a paved, even a partial paved area in terms of the snow being able to pull in and out. So, you know, if there's some sort of flexibility on being able to make that happen in the near future would be great. And still, obviously, I would still want to do the approved drainage system based on your recommendation.
Okay. The drainage is obviously an important issue, that none of the water from the parking lot ends up in the building or.
Correct.
So what happens next? Does he look at a lot more of those issues? We look at it again and then open a public hearing?
Public hearing. But one of the other things that he mentioned on there was bike racks and motorcycle spaces. And it wasn't clear how that worked into the whole parking lot.
I left out scooters and electric bikes, by the way. It was just a matter of maximizing the space. I mean, really the point is that not everyone has SUVs today. Not everyone has big cars. I'd love to actually get people to bike over to the train station if they're going back to the city, if we ever go back to work. It was just to show that we can use the space in different ways. It's not that what I was a little surprised that was flagged as an issue, that, you know, I showed a bike rack versus, you know, potential motorcycle parking. But
well, it was just the logistics of how the motorcycles, how they would either go over the sidewalks from one direction or another. It was not necessarily that you had them. It was that the logistics of how it would work. And
let's just call them bike racks instead of motorcycle parking.
I don't even remember there being motorcycle parking, but okay. It's a bike rack.
But I like the idea of motorcycle parking.
Now, Ed, one of these apartments has to be an official affordable housing unit, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Ed is strong arming me on that. We did discuss that, and it's something I'm strongly looking into for the sake of making this happen.
Well, it's part of our code, so.
Yeah, it's not a strong arm.
It's not a strong arm.
It needs to be designated and registered as affordable.
Mhm.
So just pick one on the floor plan and mark it on the plan.
So what does it mean to be affordable? Like what's the round? What's
The county sets those standards, and so it gets registered with the county, and they figure out the median income and what the affordable rent is. And then people have to go through them to rent that one, to make sure they qualify.
Yeah, I mean, and that was part of the conversation around this conversion. You know, being able to obviously move forward, and because I do think that's the best use of the space of the building. And I mean, the truth is all the apartments are affordable because they're so close to the highway that there's a little bit of there's the noise factor and things like that. So they are all priced pretty aggressively for that reason. But
so it doesn't affect you then. So it's just, you know, a matter of registering one of them with the county, and
understood.
No problem.
Understood.
So do your apartments, are they built to have noise, like special windows or anything, or a special insulation to accommodate the noise, or?
So yeah,
with every rental.
Yeah, I get him a Costco supply of earplugs. I did actually put in high insulation windows, and it's surprisingly, when the windows are closed, you actually don't hear both roadways, the overpass or the highway, that much. You know, you know, so it definitely helps, and I welcome anyone who wants to come by, and I'd give them a live demonstration. It is pretty quiet when you're inside, but there's a little bit of a mental block, I think, when people being that close to the highway, they have to kind of be able to wrap their brain around that living environment. But the people that are there are seemingly happy, and that's a good sign.
Good.
People live in the Bronx, right? You know,
above the subway
from the L.
Right.
You get used to it.
Yeah.
And there's no too many windows on the Parkway side, right?
No. That one corner unit, it has those big windows on the Parkway, and that's going to be, you know, in addition to the risks of you know, of cars flying off the highway, that's going to be, we're going to have to do something with the sound over there. But
We're gonna put in some bollards to stop the cars who run into the corner of your building, right?
Yes, that's on the site map over here. There's these bollards right over here on the bottom that are, once again, that's, I'd hate to rely on just the bollards to stopping the cars. I've been working with DOT to try to make some changes to that exit ramp. As you saw, I got them to pave it. They said that it was slippery and that's why they gave it a new paving job a couple weeks back. I don't think that's really going to stop people who are coming off 40 miles an hour making a 90-degree turn. But we're trying to get them to do more to definitely slow cars down. They're going to put in a blinking light, I believe, that says 10 miles an hour. That's their commitment to me, at least, and I keep on pushing. So I'm definitely on top of them on that front.
Interesting.
Well, I think you've got your work cut out for you with Mr. Palmer's list of 44 items to deal with. So.
I do.
So I think you should communicate with George in between meetings and
yeah,
cut this list down, and we'll see you next meeting.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So George, we're going to step into a ring together and take care of these 44 items, if that's okay.
I think they're all addressable. I think if you go through them, you'll see a lot of them are edits and clarifications.
Okay.
But you do have some work ahead of you.
Have you met George? You know, he's like 6'4".
That's the thing. I can't see him. He's the only one. He's the only one who's not showing himself.
He's very scary.
Yeah. He's too big for the screen.
Big for the screen. That's good.
Okay. Well, I appreciate everyone's time. I will circle back with George, and we'll aim to move this forward.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you very much.
You want to, hey, Ed, do you think we could do a public hearing next time and move on?
Ask George. I don't see any reason why not.
I don't see any reason why not either. So yeah, to call a vote for a public hearing would be.
Okay. I move we have a public hearing at our next meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Good.
Thank you, David.
Thank you. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, everyone, for the patience.
Okay.
Okay, Rob, you're on.
Oh, God.
Well, I don't know that I have to report very much. A couple things. I think it was covered. Did people get the email that I sent out yesterday?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. So at this point, there are a couple things going on right in parallel. One is the character guidelines for Palisade Street, which at this point I would say are basically done. Like, I would like everybody to look at it and give me their input on things that are unclear or typos and stuff like that. But the document is basically formatted in a way that's similar to the historic district guidelines. I used Steve Tilley's template so that it would look of a piece with his work, and Steve Brosnahan has been helping me clean up some of the photographs. But basically, at this point, that document is kind of done, I think, pursuant to any last comments that you all want to make. Then parallel to that, because we feel like, we should bundle a bunch of these things together before going to the Board of Trustees, Ed, this led to a whole effort to try to fill in some blanks that had never been properly filled in on the dimensional charts and the zoning. And so I've been working with Ed to fill in those blanks. And one of the documents that was sent around was those dimensional charts with the numbers in them for what we're recommending for numbers of stories and building heights and where we want to measure the heights from. And one of those things is also the various MF zones. And I think one of the things I sent around was a PDF of a PowerPoint that was kind of a survey that Ed and I did of the MF zones throughout the village, with an eye towards, again, filling in the blanks in the dimensional charts. So we're kind of, we have this sort of package of things which we feel we're ready to, I guess the procedure would be to formally present them to you all and to the AHRB and then to the Board of Trustees and have them be formally adopted. The guidelines for Palisade Street and the miscellaneous zoning changes that Ed and I have been working out to sort of bring things into conformance. I don't know, Ed, do you want to add anything to?
No, I think that was very eloquent. I think we just wait for, now that the rest of the board has a chance to read them, we'll wait till next meeting for any comments from the other members. And then, not being so, or if we make some adjustments, and then you could vote on sending it to the Board of Trustees for a public hearing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, okay.
So I have a question about the height restrictions. Just, I know we have sort of two things we've talked about, right? One is the average grade plane as a reference,
right,
and the other one is the street side of the average of the street side of the property on Main Street and perhaps here. But earlier this evening, it was mentioned that there's a third way that people do it, which is interesting because of these steep slopes, where, as I understood it, you actually created a parallel plane
right
to the grade, and you could not penetrate that.
Right.
And if you have, for example, on the south side of some of those Main Street properties where you literally have 4, maybe even 5 stories of drop, I've always been concerned about presenting a skyscraper wall. If you have 2 stories on Main Street, you might have up to 7 stories facing the river. And I think that's an interesting possible solution to that scenario. Does that make sense?
I do too. But I guess the question is, where do we want to do it? Because we don't have to, one of the things in the chart that Ed put in is he has used sort of shorthand.
Could I just respond to Alan's?
Yeah, please.
It's when that occurs on the downhill side like that, those stories, those are considered stories. So if you don't build on piers, or you start at that downhill, and then you get up to the street level and you put 3 stories from the street, now you've got a 7-story building. So you can't do that because you're not only limited by the height from the curb, you're also limited by the number of stories. So that's what prevents that.
I see. So you feel like that's the restriction that keeps.
Yeah, because the state code tells us if you're, exposed 50% of any level, it's considered a story. If the measurement from the floor above to the grade is 12 foot at any location of that level, it's a story. So that would occur every time you do that on that downhill slope. So that's why usually in those cases, if we have one like 33 Main, that vacant lot down there in the downtown, they would try to use those levels underneath for open parking. So it's not considered a story, but you can't just have, story after story or story going down the hill.
Right.
All right.
I guess what Alan is saying and what David was saying, which is, let's say on the site on Palisade Street, this one that Patty is working on, there's a scenario in which you decide that, it's going to be 37 feet to the top of a flat roof or the midpoint of a sloped roof as it faces Palisade Street. But then if the site slopes up, presumably the building could also step up following grade and kind of maintaining the 37 feet from the grade adjacent to that portion of the building. So that you're kind of following you're building inside this kind of parallelogram, as opposed
the building would step up. It could step up potentially.
Right, as opposed to what we're insisting now, which is that you have a certain height here, And you have to maintain that all the way back into the site, even as the site slopes up. And I agree. I mean, I think in a way, you know, that maybe we should think about that. And
didn't we discuss this for 100 Main too?
We did.
Yeah, we talked about this.
We did. So
that would be looking at the way we have written the definitions.
But those, you know, back to those two spots like 33 Main, and also for the north side of Cedar Street, you know, some of those lots are impossible because you'd have to have a 5-story building to have 1 story on the street or 2 stories on the street, right? I mean, it's just, it makes it impossible to, I mean, remember when Christina Griffin was trying to put something at 33 Main and she wanted to have go through the Embassy Club?
Yeah.
To, you know, to get into the parking on the lower level. I mean, it just is, it makes this.
Elevators going down to parking. I think somebody else.
Yeah, it just
was talking. I think it was Patty that wanted to come through the Embassy Club.
No, that was Christina Griffin's proposal, I think.
Yeah, in return for, she wanted the 4th story, and the benefit that she was going to return to the public was actually an elevator accessible to the public that would take people from Main Street down to the elevation.
Car elevator too. They drove in off of Main Street and got on the car elevator to go down.
Yes,
for the
right.
parking.
So nobody's ever going to build there because it's just too crazy, you know. So I mean, those are special situations. I mean, I'm sort of off the subject here in terms of ramping up or down the slope, but someday we have to look at that situation.
And this may be something we put a pin in for later, you know, and
yeah.
I don't want to slow up all the good work you guys have done.
Right.
You know, perfect is the enemy of good, but you know, I do think that maybe we want to take a look at this in the future because it may be more sophisticated and produce better design options.
Yeah, you know what, I'll look at it, Alan, because I think that there are some. It's not a new concept. I mean, and there are codes that have this idea of a like a height thing that follows the grade. So it may be possible to fold it in this round.
Yeah.
Let's see. I'll look at it.
Thanks.
Okay. If I didn't do it already, I move we adjourn.
Second.
Third.
4th.
Thank you.
I'll even vote for that.
Next month.
Take care, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Take care, guys, everybody.
Good night.